I'm gonna do some streaming tonight or today after we finish recording, and I'm gonna do some Dark Souls 3 and take some screen caps and stuff.
Awesome. Again, it doesn't have to be amazing.
Yeah. Well, I think I've already kind of beat.
Yup.
Welcome. You are entering into a strange dimension. A dimension where narratives from across space and time come together. Narratives that could have, might have, or should have been all exist here in one space. This is CineCasters Ultimate Timeline.
Welcome back to CineCasters. This is the show where we watch movies and then pitch them back to each other. This is the second episode in our CineCasters series on the Divergent movie series, not the book series, although we are talking about that. This is our second episode on Insurgent. I'm Andrew, and I'm joined by Alessa.
Hi.
So yeah, like I said, we're doing Insurgent. So if you haven't seen the first one, I recommend going and listening to that podcast first, because the idea behind this series is that instead of just doing a one-off where we watch a movie and then repitch it to each other, the goal here was to watch the whole series and then pitch them in tandem, so that not only are we drawing on the source material for our pitches, and by source material I'm referring to the movie, not the books, but we're also drawing on our past pitches. So in order to keep up with where our pitches are going, I recommend going to watch that first podcast, giving it a listen so that you're up to date with where we are at. Because this one in particular, I think, is going to be the hardest one for both of us.
Well, maybe the next one too.
Well, the reason I say that is because middle episodes or middle movies are always difficult, because you're trying to build off of what happened before while dealing with the fact that you have to set up for a third.
Yes.
Right? So you often wind up with this like middle problem where you're like, does the purpose of this book only exist to get to the next installment? Does the purpose of this movie only exist to get to the next installment? You don't have that problem on TV so much unless you have too much filler, because the point is to draw your story out in an episodic format. And I think there are certain movies that do this well, that go into it with like an overarching theme, an overarching story, and each book, instead of just being an installment in that story, is also a story on its own, like its own complete story, that doesn't necessarily have to be part of this overarching story in order to make sense as a solid individual narrative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I did notice about this movie is that it ties off a lot of the loose ends. The only questions that you have going out of it is like, well, now what? Like, what's out there?
Yeah. Well, really, the only thing we know is that what is Divergent? What does that mean? Right? Other than they don't conform. And the second one is what the fuck is on the outside of the wall. But in a lot of ways, depending on how you wrote this, you could easily just be like, that's the end.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And I wonder actually if maybe that's why, as I recall, it's been a few years. As I recall, I wonder if that's why the last book is a bit weak.
It might be, because this movie really did feel like that was it. Like, oh, okay, Divergent went really well. We'll just make one more movie, a sequel. And I don't remember how the book felt, but I don't know. But yeah.
I remember going or finishing Insurgent and feeling like, okay, like that felt pretty good. It wasn't as good as the first, but I was like, that felt pretty good. And then going into Insurgent, there's a narrative shift in the last book, Allegiant. Sorry, going into Allegiant, there's a narrative shift that gave its premise away way too quickly. Like I knew what was going to happen at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see how this will go. But let's start just with your thoughts on this movie. Goods and bads.
All right. Well, can I just say, like, the overgrown canals and stuff, like, just the city is really cool. I feel like we saw a lot more of the city in this movie than the last one.
Yeah, it felt
and
like
I
there was a
loved
budget
every
increase.
minute of it. Like the overgrown canals with like the bridges up, and like it was just so cool.
Even I think we just had more shots of the city as like a way to show like, hey, this is a much more drastically reduced population than would live in, I believe,
In
it's
a
Chicago.
city that size. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will agree with that.
That was really cool. I felt like I really liked that there was a bit of a redemption arc for Peter.
Yeah, that will play into more in the third.
Yeah. Okay. I don't remember like I said, I don't remember what happens. I'm gonna have to read the book. And let's see. Oh, okay. One thing that I really liked was like the fact that the uniforms changed for the Dauntless.
Mm-hmm.
Like they never really had like set uniforms. It was more like a coat of
Color.
blacks
Blacks
coat of
and
color,
reds.
I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, they were blacks and reds. And then with the changing of the power, I guess.
Yeah,
the
they
ones
became
that
like black
follow-
and blue.
Yeah, it was so cool. First of all, like black and blue are my colors. Like, okay, that's me. But also, I didn't want to be that person who is like, dang it, they're ruining my color, but they are. But yeah, it was just really cool.
Yeah, look,
seeing
I mean,
that
the costumes,
like the little bit of a shift.
the costumes
liked
in this, I feel like, are a little bit on the nose.
Yep.
Obviously, that has to do with identifying who's part of what faction.
Yeah.
So for
Also,
for me,
seeing all the
sometimes
Candor outfits was
the
really
Candor was really cool, the black and the white. But in my head, for
Yeah.
some reason, I always figured that the factionless would wear white, like just all white. And to
But no,
me,
they all kind of wore like grays and browns.
yeah, but to
and-
me, the factionless just look like Dauntless.
they did.
I don't know. Like, if you're gonna, I don't know. I guess you got to double down. Like, if you're gonna go into it, go into it.
But the factionless were also like 1,000 times different from Divergent.
Well, I think that the purpose is to be like, oh, actually, the factionless are not as factionless as we think. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I have my thoughts on that. I knew something like that was going to happen from the get-go. That's why I wrote it into my first pitch. Mm-hmm. So, like, one of the things that I did when I was writing my pitch was I was always looking ahead.
Yeah.
I was always like, how is this going to affect what I'm going to write next? Because I have a really good memory. So, like, I was fairly certain I remembered most of what's going to happen. So I was like constantly looking
doomed.
ahead. Like, how would I fix this based on the source material? So, like, I think I'm doing quite well. if I do say so, I think I've set myself up quite well for book 3, movie 3.
Yeah. I don't know if I have. I think that I've fixed my problem where I finished the first movie too early.
Oh yeah, well, that was gonna be my next question. I was like, how are you gonna deal with that? But first, what I want to do is just go through some of my goods and bads, which was I actually like this movie more than I like the first one.
Okay.
I thought this movie had more to say. Whereas I don't know if you remember, but when I did the first movie, I was constantly like, this movie is all about like Marxism, or I was using a Marxist critique, basically talking about government, like the factions and the system of how to support the state was what it all was. So if you can't support the state some way, then you are cast out as factionless. You're useless. You don't support the state. Or the city, or whatever you want to call it, city state. For me, I thought this movie had much more of a thematic theme for Beatrice. I thought that her sort of anger at herself was much more present. I thought it was a bit too teen angsty for my taste. Mm-hmm. But I will say that in terms of theming, like the important big plot points that happen are all based around Triss coming to terms with that. So like we're introduced to it right off the bat in the beginning. There's a couple scenes where she's like dreaming it. With Evelyn, that's Tobias's Four's mom. She has like a scene where she's dreaming it, and she's constantly riddled with this guilt. Then we have the trial scene with in Candor, and she has to say it, right? Otherwise, like that's the point of the truth serum. And then at the end, she has to like learn to forgive herself. So like thematically, I thought that was really well done. Like there's a personal story there for Beatrice that is really quite quite elegant. It's beautifully done, and it uses parts of the world to pull it out. So like in the original books, each faction has its own serum, and so it felt like we were getting to see the world by going to we now got to go to Amity and Kandor, right? And and we've already seen most of Abnegation, Dauntless, and Erudite. So now we get to see the two we haven't seen, and through the process of being at Kandor and through the world building being like, this is their serum, this is their trial, we also get a personal narrative story tied into it with Beatrice. And so for me, I was like, that's really well done. That's good world building while still having good interpersonal problems. I felt like there was no chemistry between Four and Beatrice at all in this movie.
Yeah, no.
The purpose of them being together is completely lost, other than the fact that they're traveling together. There's no love plot.
Yes.
I felt like maybe that was because everything was done with that in the first movie. So it was just like, that's where we're at.
My problem is with this movie is that, like you said, there's a lot of like growth for Triss, but it's all about Triss. We don't really get a whole lot of anyone else's problems.
Yeah. So
we don't really get growth from anyone else except maybe Peter, but it's also, again, because of her.
Well, we get yeah. So I do have a problem, which is, once again, this entire story is driven by the fact that Beatrice is special.
Yeah.
It's not driven by anything else. And if we bring it back to its root, when Beatrice takes the serum, or she's not affected by the serum because she's divergent, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the first serum when she took the mind control serum, which means that the only reason that Beatrice is put in this position, people chasing after her, going against what's happening in the revolution, is because she's special. It's not because of any choice she has made. Right?
Yep.
Now, I know actively she, chooses every day to do things in a certain way, but from a narrative standpoint, I find that frustrating because she's just special. She's divergent. And from a first-time reader standpoint, if you don't know what Divergent is, then it's just like, so you're just special and other people aren't. Some people are, but then to make it even more worser, I guess, Beatrice isn't just special, she's even more specialer than the specialist because she's 100% divergent. She's even more specialer. And to me, that's just like, okay, so some people are special, but other people are even more special. Like, that's so, I mean, and I don't want to give up the ghost in case I spoil the ending for you, but like, I know why, and it's still irritating.
Yeah.
It's just like everything that happens in here is because of a decision that Beatrice makes. The most interesting character plot in this entire thing is Caleb and Peter.
Yeah.
Because Caleb and Peter are paired together in the beginning. Like visually, we get introduced to Beatrice, then we're introduced to Four and Beatrice together, then we're introduced to Peter and Caleb together. So like they're constantly narratively framed as a pair. I wouldn't be surprised if I went back and paid attention. I wouldn't be surprised if they were also framed as parallels or opposites in the way that they were actually shot in the film. But Caleb's ultimate betrayal mirrors Peter's redemption.
Yes.
As in opposites. They're juxtaposed, which I think is really, really quite good. It's quite well done because you expect it from Peter. You expect betrayal from Peter, and when Caleb... I think the movie could have done more with that, though.
Yeah. You can see the gears turning, though, with Peter.
Yeah, I think...
throughout the movie, but you can't really...
see it with Caleb. Caleb just kind of shows up.
Caleb is... yeah.
And you're sort of just like... and he takes the gun from her.
And that's it.
And that's sort of it. And you're just like, oh, he just took the gun. I feel like there could have been more where it was like Janine could have been like, have Peter hold the gun to Caleb's head or something like that.
Yeah.
And be like, okay, but like, if you commit suicide, we'll just kill Caleb and then Beatrice won't do it, right?
Yeah.
And then we find out later, like, through some means, I didn't do this, but through some means, maybe I should have done it. I'm just spitballing. Through some means, Beatrice takes the gun and like goes to shoot it. And there's nothing, like, takes the gun from Peter, and there's nothing in it because Caleb was never in any danger. He just set it all up to make it look like he was because he knew it could manipulate Beatrice?
My other thing is, what makes Caleb so special that he gets to hang out with the big head honcho?
But not Peter.
Other than the fact that,
But not
you
Peter.
know, he's related to Triss.
But not Peter. So Peter has proven
Yeah.
himself to be quite wily and cunning. And yet Caleb shows up and is like we've never seen any action to prove that Caleb is special in any way, other than the fact that we know he's erudite, and perhaps Janine has a favoritism towards that
But she's got
her own
plenty of
faction.
other
But yeah, that's what I'm
people
saying.
from her faction.
To me,
yeah.
to me, if she's, I mean, I don't know what kind of regime she's running here, but to me, if it is a meritocracy, if it's based on how well people do things for her, not even how well they do things, but how well they're loyal, that kind of meritocracy, then it seems to me that the only thing Caleb did was come back. Peter was the one who planned all of this shit out. He was the one who lured the trap. He was the one who went in with Beatrice. He was the one who put himself at risk, all for Janine's goal. So, which is great, because when Janine betrays Peter, when she's like, I don't need you, then it's like, you know, if you let your people down, they will let you down, which is great. Then we can see, it's like Peter was saved by Beatrice's, or perceived to be saved by Beatrice's compassion, which I think is great. It's great, and it's important. It shows Beatrice, but it shows that Peter is going to have some arc, whereas Caleb he's literally a scarecrow in this movie.
He's there.
He's there.
That's about it.
Yeah, sometimes when you're just like, oh, he's there and he's with the erudite, that must mean he's betrayed. And it's just sort of like, yeah, it's implied, but also he's just there.
He doesn't
He's just a
even
fucking
like
scarecrow.
I don't know if it was the actor who played him. I can't remember.
Oh, he's got an interesting name. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, but there was not really a whole lot of acting there either. I don't know if it was just the script that he was working with or what, but it was just very boring to look at him when he was on screen. It was just plain face the whole time.
Yeah, I think he's... I will say that during the fight scene where Beatrice is on the train, and he like...
There was a little bit more there.
Yeah, there was more there. So there's clearly something going on. It's an interesting... I don't know if what kind of direction he was given or what he was trying to do with the character. Like if he was trying to show the character as like calculated but conflicted, or just conflicted, or is I mean...
Cold.
He often says, you know, I had to do what was right for me, right? Yeah. So I wonder if the idea here is that that Caleb is just selfish. The point is that Caleb is just selfish, because in the first movie we also had Caleb say, you got to do, you know, have to do what's right for your family, but you also have to do what's right for you. And then he chooses to go to erudite. So I wonder if the point is to make Caleb out to be selfish, and then juxtapose that with Peter, who is calculating, but and power hungry. He's ambitious, but he's not selfish the way that Caleb is.
Yeah.
I don't even know if those two characters could be read as opposites, as mirrors. That's just the way that I interpreted it.
They do kind of act as opposites though, because they do like cross paths. I guess,
and they constantly cross paths whenever Peter is betraying, Caleb shows up, and you know what I mean? Like they're constantly narratively interchanged that way. So I'm curious to see how that will play out in the last movie. I did figure something out. Maybe I'll save it until the last movie because it spoils some stuff. So I'll save it for the last movie before I talk about that. But this really pissed me off when I found out about it. So there's a spoiler. And
You'll
also
have to tell me about it later.
The cliffhanger for people. Oh no, I might even make you wait. Yeah, let me see here. Visually, it was visually stunning. I did feel like the ending thing where Beatrice is fighting herself was a bit Super Saiyan. Like it just feels like she's like they're doing these big moves and exploding the building because the dream is collapsing. Like it feels to me like they were just trying to be like, let's go big, like Inception. And this movie plays with time a lot, the same way that Inception does. Like it'll cut to back to the simulation where she's talking to Janine, but they're in the simulation because you didn't know, except it's fairly obvious. Yeah, it doesn't do it nearly as well as Inception does, but it does do like the whole building's collapsing and the dream is collapsing like Inception. And I thought that fight scene was too much. I actually think it would have been better if it was, and it would have been maybe harder to pull off, but this movie clearly had a huge budget. I think it would have been interesting to see if it was just Beatrice fighting Beatrice the way, like just back in the mat in the Dauntless facility.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No one else is around. Just her fighting herself in like hand-to-hand combat, and her refusing to fight back because she has to learn to forgive herself. And I think that would have been much more intimate, because it just would have been like,
definitely would have.
yeah. And I felt like instead of this big moment of triumphant, like building smash, collapse, Alderaan chunks everywhere, it would have been better if it was like if it was just them fighting, like hand-to-hand combat, just and Beatrice is just defending herself while her other self beats the shit out of her, because she has to learn to forgive herself.
Yeah.
More intimate, more powerful.
One thing was the first time that she's, is it the first or second time that she's in the sim at Erudite, and suddenly 4 is there saving her, and it turns out to be a sim. That's not the first time that's happened.
Yeah.
I was kind of bored. I was like, come up with something new, please.
Yeah, haven't we already done this?
Yeah, we've already seen this with 4 coming in, and then all of a sudden, Janine's the bad guy again, and we've seen it.
Yeah, the movie is kind of repetitive a little bit on its own material. Yeah. That's pretty much all I have to say about this. Everything else that I talked about, I'm going to put in my own. That was in my own pitch. But I will say that I liked everything about Kandor a lot as a construct. Like, I don't know if I would actually be in Kandor, or Candor, but I did like the way that their society was framed. Like, the trial was great. I think the world building in the books is actually goes more into depth. So the trials were kind of lost on me, I think. For 4's, it made sense, the questions that he was being asked. Yeah. So,
but then Triss's, I was like, "Okay, how did we get here?"
There's a point in time where Beatrice starts confessing her own feelings about how she feels, and to me that was like I said, story-wise, narratively, and thematically, great, absolutely wonderful. But in terms of the actual like nature of truth serum, unless she was directly asked, I feel like, about what was happening, there's no reason for her to dig into her feelings. I think it would have been interesting to have, because Jack Kang, the leader, talks about how he says right at the beginning, I think you believe that's your truth. He says that to 4. And so I think it would be interesting if Beatrice outright says, I killed these people, I did this, and it was terrible, like I did those things because whatever. And then it would be interesting to see if the way that the people of Dauntless and Kandor react is with at first they're like, so you did kill those people, like you were responsible for harming some innocent people, and then have Beatrice ask Beatrice directly why that happened and how she felt about it. Because I think remorse is also important, just as important as the truth. I don't know how well the people of Kandor would have taken it, but remorse is a kind of personal truth, I guess. So yeah. Do you want to get into pitches?
I had one more thing, actually.
Oh, okay. Oh, so yeah, go for it.
Two more. So in the very beginning, Triss's eyelashes are too perfectly mascara to have just woken up. Okay, just putting that out there.
Yeah.
Anyways, and then the last thing, I actually had to look it up. The Assassin's Creed movie. I don't know if you've watched it.
I have not seen the Assassin's Creed movie, so I'm unfamiliar.
Okay, so the Assassin's Creed movie came out after this one, but the idea is kind of the same, where they're in a sim. And
I'm familiar with the story of Assassin's Creed. I know it from the games.
And like in the movie, they had like, their sim was a physical thing, and the character would be like doing leaps and crazy things, like just out in the middle of this open space, while his brain was like actually in the sim, but like his body was doing all the moves, and it was
Animus, I think is what it's called.
The Animus, yeah. And then seeing that here, I was like, oh man, this is like Assassin's Creed. I'm like a huge Assassin's Creed fan. I've played almost all of the games. So
yeah.
Anyways, sorry, that was just a side note that I was just like, oh man, I had to look it up because I was like, who's copying who here?
Yeah.
Because it's very similar.
I don't know. I'd have to look up when this book came out versus when Assassin's Creed 1 started, because the whole Animus project started with Assassin's Creed 1, the video game. So, and as far as I can tell, Assassin's Creed 1 is probably 2008.
But with the Animus in the games, originally you're just laying down. There's nothing really happening.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking like narratively what the difference between the simulations was.
No, I'm talking about just the movie.
You mean purely
and,
like aesthetically the way it looks?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was really cool.
Yeah. Well, you can do stuff like that now with movies, right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just it was cool.
Should we get into pitches?
Yeah.
Do you want to start or do you want me to start?
I kind of do want to start.
Okay, go for it.
Should I do like a little recap of what my last one was?
Yeah, if you make it like 2 or 3 sentences.
All right. So, 4 is now female.
Right.
And we ended early.
You ended with what?
Right when they woke up in the Dauntless base and everyone's being controlled, and then it kind of ends with that random Divergent just getting capped.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're right before the actual like carrying out of the genocide.
Yes. Okay, so the movie actually starts with the Dauntless members on the train. And Triss is like, looking around like, okay, I don't know what's going on. There's no one, in control here. So, or like no one in power here. So, what is everyone doing? There's no actual, nobody telling anyone what to do, but they're still doing it. And so she sees 4, up ahead of her, but she's like, I don't want to break rank just in case someone notices when we stop. Or in case, they have orders that if someone breaks rank that, to attack them. And so they wait and they get to abnegation, and immediately, like as soon as she can, Triss is just like, all right, I'm going to go book it to 4. We're going to see what the heck is going on. Maybe 4 is, 4 is like me. She should be also free of the serum. And then, so when she wakes 4 up from the serum, there's actually like a little bit of like, oh, whoa, where am I? What's going on? Why am I here? Kind of, right? So that we can actually see that, yes, 4 was actually being controlled. Mm-hmm. And then, the next part kind of plays out the exact same as in the Divergent movie, which is they are looking for Triss's parents. They get captured. 4 gets taken away because Triss has pissed off Janine. And then Triss is supposed to get killed, but then her mom comes in, blah, 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 blah. You've seen the movie. So then, where are we? So when we get to the room where 4 is hooked up, and there's like all the control panels, like I'm again just skipping past all that stuff. We know Peter is with them and Caleb and everyone. So Triss doesn't actually see 4
right away.
Yeah. So 4 is just in the background somewhere, hooked up to a sim. They're trying something new with her. And Triss starts trying to sneak into the control room, but suddenly someone shows up from behind, and it's 4, and they fight. But no matter what Triss does, nothing actually is like fixing 4. Nothing is stopping her from continually trying to attack. So she's forced to injure 4 in a way that she won't be able to keep fighting. Yeah. So I don't know, she like stabs her in the leg or something. Just something to get her on the ground. So then it's her versus Janine's entourage, and she ends up kind of fighting her way to the control panel. Janine sees that it's a losing battle. She's like, oh, I don't understand why this one's so weird, but whatever. Triss is apparently just that great of a fighter.
All of a sudden.
Well, it's not really all of a sudden, because remember, I put training in the last one.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So 4 is still trying to attack Triss from the ground, but like everyone's legs are in the way. And then so Janine, she's smart enough to realize, okay, losing battle, shut everything down. The attack is over, but nobody knows what happened. and she books it out of there with the rest of her guards. And so in that moment, like, everyone wakes up and they're like, oh my god, what just happened? Like, you know, same thing that we saw from 4. So Triss, 4, Caleb, and Peter, and 4's dad. Marcus.
Yeah.
And was there anyone else?
No. Unless,
so,
I mean, if Beatrice's parents are dead, then no, it's just them.
Yeah, no, they're still dead.
Yeah.
Still, same thing happened.
Yep.
So their group run out and they notice a lot of like infighting between the Dauntless. The leaders are like, stay in line, you know, get back to the trains, we'll figure everything out. And people are like, no, like, this is not what I signed up for, and they're trying to book it. And so lots of fighting going on. And it's chaos, so different groups go different ways, and there's a lot of shooting. And so the Triss's group, we're just like, let's just get out of here first, we'll figure out where we're going after. And so they're separated from all the other Dauntless, who are also kind of rebelling against the leadership. And then they end up finding their way, kind of going towards Amity, in hopes of finding sanctuary. And they're noticing, like, okay, like, you know, we know that there are other Dauntless out here. Maybe they're at different Amity groups. Like, can you ask around? And the leader is just like, yeah, sure, you know, we'll send out some feelers and see if we can find them, but don't expect anything. But you also can't stay here. Like, we need you gone, because having you here is inviting violence to us from the rest of Dauntless and from Erudite. And so Amity is like, we'll give you food and water and new clothes, but you have to leave before night. So they're on their way out already by the time that the rest of the Dauntless roll in. So it's been like less than 24 hours, and this is attack number 2.
And 4 is injured.
And 4 is injured. That was my plot hole. I forgot to address that. Yeah, because I messaged you last night. I was like, I have a plot hole. Oh no. It's fine. You know, they're just limping along. Whatever. So yeah, so they're like, okay, we're gonna go to Candor because maybe, you know, we can get them to believe us, because we know they value like truth and justice, right? So they head out, and the Dauntless trucks roll in. And they're like, well, we need to see what they're doing, because we want to be able to, like, I don't know, predict their next move or something. I didn't really have a good reason for this, but anyways, so they notice that they're like testing the Amity people, and they're like, all right, they're doing something, like they're doing more testing. They must be looking for more Divergent. Let's just get out of here. Maybe we can warn the other groups of, you know, the other factions that this is happening. So they're about to leave, and they notice Peter is missing from their little group, and then they see him walking up to the Dauntless guards and then pointing in their way, but they're like, oh, nope, we're out of here. And so there isn't actually a chase. I took that out. But they do get onto the train. They find a handful of Dauntless mixed in with the factionless. There's no fight. I really wanted to tone down a little bit of the violence in this one, can you tell?
But okay.
The factionless are like, all right, cool, there's just more of you guys, I guess. But like the Dauntless are like, yo, I can't believe you guys are still alive. Like, you know, your faces are everywhere. They're looking for you. We have to, you know, find somewhere safe for you to go. So they get led to the factionless base, and they're like, you know, spend the night with us. We'll head out to Candor in the morning. And then, you know, we'll just figure things out as we go. So they get there, and all of a sudden 4's mother is there. I couldn't come up with a name for 4. Couldn't come up with like her real name.
Toby
Doesn't really work though. I don't know.
Why not? Toby can be either male or female.
I guess, but I was trying to come up with like a good like feminine name.
For Tobias?
Yeah.
The closest one I can think of is like Toby or Antonia.
Maybe. Anyways, so then Triss actually gets to learn some stuff about Four because, you know, she's seen Four's dad enter the picture. There's a lot of like tension between them, and then Four's dad is out of the picture, still, you know, with Amity, or who knows now. And then all of a sudden Four's mom is in here making a ruckus of their life. And then Four goes to sulk, and then, you know, it's, again, I'm just paraphrasing everything that's happened, but basically same stuff that happened in the movie.
Yep.
Triss and Caleb are left to awkwardly sit with Four's mom, Evelyn, thank you. Because Triss wasn't really sure what the boundaries are between her and Four quite yet. They haven't really had a chance to talk about what's happened between them.
Especially
after a lot has been happening. So she's like, you know, I'll let her stew for a little bit. Maybe I'll go up and talk to her after. I just don't want to encroach because she doesn't feel comfortable with it yet. So, but it is kind of obvious. You can see them like stealing glances at each other all the time. Anyways, so they have a little bit of dinner and it's like super awkward. Evelyn is just like, so how is she doing? How is she at Dauntless? You know, how's life? And they're just like, I don't know how to talk to you. And then Triss is like, all right, I'm tired. I'm going to bring this plate up to Four so she can eat and, you know, rest up and be ready for tomorrow. And then Triss and Four have a nice little heart-to-heart. And they end up like laying down and just staring at the ceiling while they're talking. We get to learn more about Four
as a person,
beyond the fact, like, as a person. Because we got a little bit in Divergent, but
we got almost
really
none in
much.
this movie.
Yeah. So, they have a nice little heart-to-heart. We get to learn a bit more about their life and exactly what happened and why it's suddenly such a shock that Evelyn is still alive. And then Four gets a little quiet, and Triss looks over, and Four is looks like she's asleep. So Triss is like, okay, I'm gonna get up and go to my own bed. And then Four is like, no, don't leave yet. And then they just kind of hang out for a little bit more, and then they both fall asleep. Right? So Triss's nightmare in this part is going to be a little different.
Instead of just having
really awkward.
You're having your boyfriend's
Evelyn
mom just like
sitting
stare
there.
at you. That's my idea of a nightmare.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely a nightmare to see your significant others just like staring at you while you're in
significant
bed.
other's parent just like, oh hey.
Yeah, I just like watching him sleep. Ugh. No. Okay. Anyways. So instead of that awkward nightmare, it's in the alleyway from earlier in the movie when Triss shoots. Is his name Will?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then immediately goes to run out and see, like, did I kill him? Did I kill him? Is, like, you know, freaking out. And then when she gets there, she sees that it's Four there laying there instead. And so she, like, jumps awake. She's like, oh my god, okay. Oh, wow, I'm in bed still. This is a problem. Or the wrong bed. So she's like, all right, I'm just going to go get some air. That's what she tells Four. And then she gets up and walks away. And then Triss and Evelyn have a little bit of a heart-to-heart together, talking this time about Triss's mom, because apparently the two knew each other, and it was Triss's mom that helped Evelyn fake her death. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, she's like, I'll be forever grateful for Evelyn for help. Or what is Triss's mom's name?
That's a good question.
I'll be forever grateful to your mom.
We'll say.
Yeah, I can't remember either. For helping me, like, so, you know, if there's anything that you need, let me know. I want to be there in you know, to repay my debt. Natalie, there we go. And so she says something along the lines of like, Four won't listen to a word I say, but maybe if the idea comes for you, like we could do an alliance, dauntless and factionless. And we can take over and either fix the factions or tear them down completely and relearn how to live without the factions. And Triss is like, I need time to think about it. I'm gonna go back to bed now, bye. But she goes back to her own bed that time. So cut to the morning. They're outside, they're walking, they're going through the really cool canals, like overgrown
super cool.
grass and trees. It was super cool.
Very The Last of Us.
Yeah. And so Caleb is just like, hey, I'm gonna back out. I'm going back to Amity for a little bit. They're done their raid, which means it's probably safe to go back. I'm just gonna see if I can blend in with them. And Triss is like, all right, I guess I'll come looking for you after this whole thing blows over. So they head out, and then continuing on their trek to Kandor, things are a little awkward between Four and Triss, because Four is just like, you left last night, and Triss is just like, well, I didn't know if I was allowed to stay. And then, so they're like kind of semi talking about things now that they have a little bit of time. They're just walking, They kind of like dance around the subject. It's light, and then all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose because there's Dauntless suddenly attacking them. Like, the blue and black Dauntless.
The new Dauntless.
The new Dauntless, yeah.
The Iryu Dauntless.
I don't like that. Yeah, so the group ends up getting split up. Four and Triss are now going opposite ways. Four and a couple of the other Dauntless that they were traveling with managed to get away. They're on their way to Kandor, hoping that Triss is also on that way. And Triss and the other Dauntless get captured. The other Dauntless and her also get tested, and then we learn about Triss being 100% or whatever. And the other two, not Divergent, the other two Dauntless are just killed on sight.
Pew pew.
So then we see Triss on the way to the compound. So then, on the flip side, Four makes it to Kandor, and is like, I'm willing to stand trial for you, but not for Erudite, because I don't believe that they're gonna,
the trial won't be fair.
The trial won't be fair. And so Four is like, all right, use the serum on me. The same kind of thing happens. The questions would be different. I didn't like those questions.
The questions would be different. Ugh.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So, maybe they ask about what their plan is once, they meet up with the other Dauntless. And the other Dauntless that Triss and Four were traveling with, had also received the offer of Dauntless and Factionless alliance. So, like, Evelyn was covering all her bases. And they kind of catch wind that Triss was taken to the Erudite compound. And so they're like, all right, we need to figure this out after Four passes the trial. I'm like jumping all over the place.
That's okay.
Can you tell that I wrote this at 2 a.m.?
No, but now I can. Did you write it last night at 2 a.m.?
I was working on it like all evening, and then 2 a.m. hit, and I was like, all right, I have to finish this.
Wow.
Anyways, so where am I? Four and the Dauntless that were waiting at Kandor, they all travel back again to the Factionless, which I thought was like ridiculous.
Yeah.
How many times did they go back and forth? And on their way out, they actually hear the raid starting on Kandor, so they had left just right at the perfect time again.
Yeah.
And So, yeah, 4 makes it back, and she's just like, okay, we're joining with you, but, you know, I'm making it clear right now that this isn't for you. This is for my friend and the person that, you know, I'm still not sure how I feel about, but, you know, my life is not that great without her right now. So we actually see there's a little bit of, like, romantic growth between the two of them instead of just, bam, they're in love.
Yeah. Well, we got a little bit of that with 4 in when he says, like, I fell in love with.
Yeah, but it just...
It's not growth, it's just a revelation, I guess.
Yes. And, yeah, where are we? So, they get confirmation that Triss has been captured. And kind of word that there's been a lot of testing going on the Divergents, and that the other Divergents who have been tested have all died. And so 4 is like, all right, I'm just going to head out ahead of you guys. I'll see you there. And then, again, we see that 4 gets captured. The trials within the sim, I wouldn't change. I thought that was so cool. Like, the building floating through the sky. Like, again, cool imagery.
Visually cool, yeah.
Yeah, visually. But I, at the same time, was like, okay, why is this happening?
Exactly.
Where are we? So then basically all the trials are the same. Caleb and Peter are both there. Caleb is clearly fighting with himself, but he's like, you know, I want to help. And so he actually, like, makes himself useful. I couldn't figure out how, but I really wanted him to actually be there and to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And to give Triss some grief. Other than just, like, awkwardly being like, I'd sacrifice you for the good of the world kind, so obviously I'm still abnegation. Stupid. And then on their way back again, I guess, Triss sees that 4 is captured.
Mm-hmm. On their way back to her cell, yeah. Just like in the movie.
On the way back to her cell. And they find out that 4 was also confirmed to be, like, 100% Divergent. So it's not just Triss that's special. Because, hey, why not have 2 special protagonists? And so, again, the same kind of thing happens, but this time Triss is like, all right, it's not just on me. Like, I have to pass these trials so that 4 doesn't have to go through this.
Yeah.
So we actually see a little bit more of, like, actual selfless stuff, because, again, it was just so weird. The escape, I really wouldn't change that escape with Peter helping out, like, changing sides at the last minute again. Because I really liked that.
Actually, that works really well for...
Yeah, and then 4 just being like, you know, when they finally actually get to see each other again in person without a glass between them, she's just like, okay, like, I realized a lot of things after you got taken away. Like, we need to, you know, talk about it after we get out.
Woohoo! I'm romantically invested in them now. I might even go so far as to say that I ship it.
Really?
Yeah.
Amazing, because I ship it.
Yeah, you wrote it, so I would hope so.
So, they finish the final sim for Amity, which is less so about forgiving herself for all the other people's deaths and more so for forgiving herself for, like, you know, she thought she was special, but there's more than just her.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then the people start heading out the walls. You know, the doors are open, the signal is broadcast everywhere. But then, instead of ending with, like, Evelyn killing Janine, I just thought that was really corny.
I actually don't think, if I had to say something, I think the ending's trying to make us think that happened. I don't think it happened because the shot wasn't shown on screen. It blacked out. I don't think Janine's dead. I can't
True.
remember,
Okay.
but I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. So, the other Divergent members who are, at Erudite now, I don't know why I call them Divergent members, Divergent people, are sitting there going like, what are we the solution to? What was the problem? Like, none of this answered any of our questions. We just know now that there are people outside of the walls, maybe?
That were waiting for us to be done whatever we were doing in here.
Yeah, but then there's also a little bit of rage from these people, from like the
Divergent.
Divergent, who have been hunted, only to find out that they're the solution.
Yeah.
They're like, well, why wasn't this outlined to begin with? And yeah. So then they just kind of, there's a lot of like looking around, awkward, and then just like cut.
Yeah. No, that's good. I think
I
you're...
totally did not do that justice to what I had in my brain.
No, that's okay. I think when I said it, like I said, I think there's splitting Beatrice and 4 up allows for parts of the story to happen separately. So we can still have the simulations. We have growth for Beatrice, particularly if you leave in what we were talking about in terms of her growth, character growth in terms of forgiving herself. Mm-hmm. Right? Now we don't get these...
I just wasn't sure what she needed to forget. I was thinking more along the lines of like her forgiving all of the other people for like hunting her down, because that's just, she seems to be a problem and it's their job, and she realizes that they're on opposite sides, but
well, regardless of how you rewrite it, splitting them up, what it does is it allows, like, while Beatrice goes through the tests, right, she has some revelations, and while 4 goes through the trial at Candor, she goes through revelations, and so the two of them have separate arcs, but they're constantly like, where's the other? Like,
yes.
Where's my partner? Is this going to be real? And I think like having them like pine for each other a little bit keeps them grounded and interested, as you as a reader or a watcher would be interested in what's happening to the other, because you're invested in how they're going to react if the other one lives or dies. Mm-hmm. So it keeps you interested in what's happening with Beatrice, because it's interesting, like hopefully it's interesting to watch, but then also when it switches back to 4, you're interested in what's happening with her because Beatrice is invested and they're invested in each other, and you as a audience member are invested.
Yeah.
So I think that works really, really well.
One thing that I did want to also say, that like the reason that I had it so that Triss didn't go to Candor is because in my brain, if the serum to control Triss didn't work, why would the truth serum work?
But the fear serum does work on her.
But the fear serum is also, kind of, there's also a machine helping it along.
I assumed that it was just plot. Like that was it?
Plot devices.
I think the idea there was that the serums work less well on Divergence, as I recall from the book.
She's 100% Divergent.
But
she
it works
didn't get
less
sucked in
well.
at all.
It works less well, not totally unwell.
Yeah.
So I think
So like that to me, like 4 is also, considered like 100%, but she was under the sim when they were attacking Abnegation.
Okay, but like in the movie, do you want me to spoil this for you?
I don't know.
Well, spoilers. In the movie and in the books, 4 is not Divergent at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
4 is not Divergent at all. Which is dumb for reasons that will all be explained in the next movie, the next installment that we do in this series.
Okay.
But yeah, 4 is not Divergent. So you making your version of 4, making her Divergent 100% as well, is interesting. I wonder how you're going to deal with that.
This is going to be tough.
No, but that's not a bad thing. But no, I liked it. I felt like there was more growth between your themes were more between Beatrice and 4 as opposed to just Beatrice's self-growth, which I think works.
Because I really, even in Divergent and in this movie especially, I felt like there was not that much growth for 4. We saw a little bit of his background.
Well, 4 is a more interesting character, I think. It's the same reason why I actually find Caleb and Peter more... Even Caleb, who's supposed to be a bad guy, like, I find his arc is more interesting. Like, I'm invested in... I'm like, yeah, what were his motivations?
Yeah. I wanted to do something with Caleb, but I really couldn't figure it out. He's kind of a
we don't have much to go on. He just sort of does
Yeah.
things. Yeah. Peter, at least you feel like, and Miles Teller is a fantastic actor. So
Yeah, he's awesome.
I'm going to get into mine if that's okay.
Go for it.
Okay, so mine opens up the same way through context clues. And I think actually through propaganda, like through the screening, we find out that the killing of Abnegation went on while For, Beatrice, Caleb, and Peter escaped. So the entire genocide that they were forced to watch, they escaped, and then Erudite and the Dauntless were then like information and propaganda was given out saying that the genocide that was committed. They say that the genocide was committed by Janine in cold blood and that Abnegation had nothing to hide. Like they weren't being corrupt or anything like that. But Janine, through her propaganda, which is mass distributed as opposed to just like the 5 people, Marcus, Peter, Beatrice, For, and Caleb. Like Janine's mass propaganda plays it off like they're just a group of insurgent rogue militants that chose not to conform to the norms that Erudite was placing and to get rid of the corruption in Abnegation. So she brands them as they're divergent because they do not conform. So in Amity, Beatrice, Caleb, For, Peter, and Marcus are all hiding out. So Joanna is the leader. She's told them that they can have asylum for as long as they cause no violence. They cannot cause violence. Beatrice is suffering from this like harsh reality that she had to kill to survive and that she got people killed for what she believed in. So she's riddled with guilt, and so she lashes out, but sometimes even with For. So when she and Peter start to get into a fight, that can still happen. Like Amity gets together, but they're more of a democracy. There's not one leader. So Joanna is like, I'm the voted in leader, and I say, they can stay as long as, this is a place of nonviolence and forgiveness, and that's why you were given asylum, right? But there are others who are basically saying like, no, like they're going to bring violence to us. Like this is, but she's like, no, Amity is built on forgiveness and asylum, right? So they forgive in turn. They only ask for kindness. They don't even care that you're divergent. We don't care what you did. That's what we do here. So For likes the way that the Amity live, but Beatrice finds their way of living difficult because she's like, they don't stand up for what is right. They don't. And For is like, but it's peaceful here. And she's like, yeah, but So Beatrice is proven right when the Dauntless show up. They ask for permission to seek out Divergence, like the group. But Joanna, the leader, is like, no, like this is not how we do things here. We're all about peace. You're welcome to come in, but you can't just search people. You can't just search for people, and you can't just search people, or you can search through the things and the belongings of the Amity. Not that the Amity really have belongings the same way, but she's like, that's not how we do things. Like that's the reason there's order and structure. But the Dauntless, of course, we're given, free reign. And so they basically are just like, okay. And they start like tearing the place apart. And who's going to stop them in the Amity, right? Who's going to stop them? So Beatrice is basically proven right. Eric and Max just decide to run the place over. So Peter rats out the group. Beatrice, Caleb, and For run, but they don't do the whole train thing because there's a scene where For is like in the middle of a field firing at trees and somehow isn't being hit. And I was like, that's not how tactics work. You can't be in the middle of the field firing at trees when there's one of you and a whole group. Like that's just you're dead. It's tactically terrible. Yeah. So on the train, the 3 of them come across the Factionless. The Factionless are like a ragtag group. They're like people who don't conform, right? But they're led by a dude named Andrew, who, unlike the rest of the Factionless, has a Dauntless tattoo. So tensions are high with the Factionless. They think that Beatrice and For are Dauntless, and they're not really sure what to make of Caleb. For and Caleb try to talk to the Factionless, but because Beatrice is just angry, she lashes out, and For is like, what the fuck? Like, we were going to talk our way out of that. And Caleb was helping. So the fight ensues, but then ends when For is able to prove that they're not Dauntless with Caleb's help. They're technically now Factionless too. And he does this by saying his name, because that's dumb, but sure, why not? It turns out that the Factionless are those that don't belong, but there is much more of them that actually choose not to belong. That they don't just they're not just useless. Some of them choose not to belong to the organization. They just the organization of how the state in the city organizes itself into factions. So some of them are actually like those who left, like Andrew, who used to be Dauntless, and their leader, which is Four's mother, Evelyn. So basically, they continue to exist in the city, and they've realized that they've started organizing the factionless, and some of those who were Dauntless are training them to be soldiers. And Evelyn is saying, if we don't fight back, eventually Janine will crush the factionless the same way that she did Abnegation. She's just going to wipe us all out because we're useless.
Yep.
So we can then have a scene where Four calls out his mother. She's basically like, you talk about taking Janine out, but then you always end with who will govern next, right? And somehow it's always you. This is just a coup, right? It's just a coup where you want power. But Evelyn is hurt by Four's words, but she's fascinated by Beatrice, because Beatrice chose during the ceremony in the first one to go to Dauntless instead of doing what the test told her. She's like, you chose in a way that I never thought I could choose. So Evelyn was a little girl. She was actually from Erudite. She took the aptitude test and told her to go to Abnegation. And she was like, okay, so I thought the system was correct because that's the way the state runs. And so I went there, but I was unhappy. And I became more and more unhappy with the system, because it put me into a place that I was unhappy. I didn't feel fulfilled. I was just, determined Marxism would be alienated from her work. She wasn't happy. So eventually she agreed to marry Marcus, not because they were in love, because she thought it would allow her more control over her life, like more power. But it turns out that Marcus was just abusive. So Evelyn tried to say something, but she was hushed up because his image as a leader of Abnegation was more important. But she wouldn't be quiet, so she was cast out, and it was covered up as her death. But as a factionless, she didn't see herself as lesser. She saw how she could be more, and she started to organize the factionless in a way that lets her have the power that she wanted, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, she wouldn't phrase it that way, but through context, you'd be like, oh, this bitch power hungry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So then, what I also wanted to come out of that was the fact that Beatrice knows that the system is flawed. So in my first pitch, I also talked about how the system, the aptitude test is a lie. It just gives you whatever they need more of.
Yeah.
And now Beatrice tells Evelyn this, and Evelyn is like, oh, of course, like that's why I was like, the system is flawed. And she's like, gives us just more credibility to what I was talking about, to the reason why we need to fight back. And she even says, like, some of the people, the reason I want you two to join is because some of the people have heard that message. And even some of the Dauntless, very few of them, some of the Dauntless chose not to follow Max and Eric and actually took refuge with Candor in order to, they've heard the message and they were like, yeah, we think there's something to this. Very few, though, not 100, like more like 15.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Beatrice and Four go out to find the Dauntless, and Caleb leaves in the same way. He's like, I need to figure out what I'm going to do. So the trial at Candor can take place the same way with the serum and with Four. I like the part where Four, before the trial, convinces Jack that a trial at Candor would be better because it would be inherently more truthful, more honest. I just thought he had some sound arguments there. I was like, that's a really good scene. Four showing off how smart he is. So the trial consists of Beatrice and Four taking the serum, much like the fear serum, but this one will cause them pain unless they tell the truth. So it like physically causes you pain. And so they're forced to do the trial. Beatrice is forced to explain how she killed her parents, to do something she wanted to do, and she feels guilty because that's good theming. So I kept that. Just like before, the Dauntless appear and try to find Beatrice out, but in the end, Beatrice wants to kill Eric, but Four stops her. She's like in a rage. She's going to kill Eric, and Four stops her and says, no, more killing will not make you feel better about what you're doing. All you're doing is alienating me and yourself. And so instead, he says, we're going to do this like a trial, right? And he injects Eric with the serum, and Eric's like not in any pain at all because he just keeps saying the truth. He's like, Janine wanted me to do this, and she believed, and he's just explaining his truth, which is that he believed that abnegation was bad and that he was told to find Beatrice. And all of the people in Candor are like, this is ridiculous. Like, none of this is the way that we see the world. And so we get it more as more of a trial, and then once it's all over, Four pulls out his gun and shoots Eric, but he does it as more of a
Yeah.
trial. It has to feel justified to the audience. The genocide of
Yes.
abnegation. Yeah. So then they go back with the factionless, and the whole suicide thing can play out, giving Beatrice the need to leave. So now she's in Erudite. It turns out that the reason Janine wanted to find Beatrice, she's been captured, was that she's looking for something that that her parents had. She's looking for something that Andrew and Natalie Pryor had that no one is supposed to know about. And it was given to them to hide. So not even Marcus knew what it was. He just gave it to them to hide. So Janine can't find it, but she thinks Beatrice might know where it is. But Beatrice is like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so she's like, okay, we'll just torture you to get it out of you. And she's like, physical torture is not going to make me remember. And she's like, it's not physical torture. And so what it is a system that uses all 5 serums. So that's truth, fear, amnesia, death and pain, and peace. And it mixes them all together in order to create like, basically like lucid dreams. So simulation that will then affect how Beatrice's memory or scenarios will. So it's basically my way of getting to the simulation. And the simulations can play out all the same. So here she's subjected to like the emotional fallout of all the shit that basically has happened to her, all within the sim. But there's no box. All this is an effort to search Beatrice's brain for any sign of what her mother might have hid and where it might be. So after hours, Beatrice is pulled out. They didn't find anything. And Beatrice is like, you got to let me go. He didn't find anything. And Janine's like, oh no, we got 12 hours. We can go again till tomorrow. As long as you're alive, we can keep doing this. So on her way out, Beatrice sees Peter beating Caleb. And she like screams for Caleb. But it turns out that in order to get out of being tested on, Caleb sold Beatrice out. He told them how to get at Beatrice. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't Peter who did the whole betrayal. It was Caleb. Yeah. In order so that they wouldn't test on him. So back in the simulation, Beatrice is confronted by Janine and her mother and herself and Caleb, and she realizes that she has to forgive herself. And in this process, she remembers a moment from her past where she walked in on her mother hiding something. But just then, the factionless actually come in and save Beatrice, and it's not part of the sim. Like, they actually come in and save Beatrice. So Beatrice goes after Janine during all the chaos, and he tells her, you lost. Like, that you lost. You will never find the hidden thing, and you'll have no chance to crush the factionless, just like you did abnegation. And Janine is, like, genuinely shocked. She has no idea the factionless even had an army. She didn't even know she was like, they're useless. I didn't even think about them. And Janine even hides behind Peter to try and save her own life. But Beatrice is like, fuck it, I'm not going to kill you or Peter. And so she leaves. And then we can have Peter all of a sudden being like, oh, hey, like something is changing here. So in the wreckage of abnegation, Beatrice and 4 find a hologram message saying, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope. No, I'm joking. The hologram message saying that the whole city was set up as an experiment. All of this, all the information, even the factions, it was all set up as an experiment. Outside the walls isn't even dangerous. It was merely used as information to keep the city dwellers inside so that they wouldn't exit. Mm-hmm. And this was just like information that was given to them, misinformation. They show this to Janine, who is waiting to be tried in Erudite by Evelyn. And everything, so that's the ending. She's like, Janine is on trial in Erudite. She's going to be tried by the factionless.
Yeah.
So my basic overarching theme is that everything, I mean, still the theme with Beatrice forgiving herself, but the overarching theme that I'm carrying over, and I think will be my thesis for these movies from 1, 2, and 3, and possibly 4 if we need it, is that everything is about how information is used to control people's thinking. So Eric truly believed that what he was doing is right through propaganda, and like the intro to the movie is done through propaganda, and then the way that Janine didn't even know that the factionless, she wasn't even concerned with the factionless. It was all used by Evelyn to control the factionless as an army. And this goes back to this idea in Marxism that you basically need to have your proletariat organized by your middle class to overthrow your bourgeoisie, right? Mm-hmm. And then basically your middle and upper class switch, and the proletariat is just a tool that gets used. So in this way, the Dauntless were the tool in the first one. And in this one, the factionless become a new tool for Evelyn to use to try and essentially have a coup on Janine after Janine did a coup on Abnegation. So it's all like this repetition of power structures using the same method of controlling people through information. Yeah. And that was Insurgent.
I like that.
Yeah. I'm excited to see how this idea of information and propaganda will propagate into 3, because I think 3 has less to do with it. And I'm curious to see actually if 4 will even be necessary between the two of us. If we'll need a 4th movie. Because there was never... I don't know. I've never seen these movies before. So I don't know if they like finished the 3rd movie with a cliffhanger or if they like finished it outright.
I guess we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see.
If it finishes with a cliffhanger, then we'll do a 4th episode where we can just do whatever we want, which will be interesting. Good to me. And if it finishes with the 3rd movie, then we'll finish there. But I have a feeling that the fact that it was canceled means that they split the last book into 2 halves, and that means that we will have the opportunity to finish it based on our pitches, which I'm excited about. This may be a rare opportunity we will never get again in any other movie series. Was there any other movie series?
Did they do the same thing with the Maze Runner?
I think Maze Runner was completed, though. It took a while because...
did it?
Yeah, the main actor was injured.
Oh.
I can't remember his name. He's a talented actor, too. But he was injured during the process, and so I don't think the last movie came out for a couple years because he just
I couldn't remember.
Finish. But I'm fairly certain they finished that. I actually hated the Maze Runner series as a series of books. Not that it was poorly written.
The books.
I haven't seen any.
But they gave me nightmares.
Not that it was poorly written. It was quite intense. Particularly the first book. I was like, this is awesome. But there was certain things that happened throughout the books where I was just like, man, I am so angry right now. Like, this is frustrating and not well done. Particularly the last book.
The movies were pretty faithful to the books, though.
I've never seen them, so.
Decently.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I know I've seen the first 2.
Well, maybe we'll save that for the next CineMasters theory. We'll only do young adult fiction. I
would honestly be okay with that. Like, that's what I'm most like familiar.
That's what I like to read too,
with these movies and stuff.
Yeah. When I'm not reading,
I have to say,
in-depth philosophy.
I'm really jealous of your awesome theme. Like, that's a deep theme that you've got going on.
Honestly, the easiest way to come up with themes, I'll just do a quick tangent into writing. The easiest way to come up with a theme is to read as much as you can and just try and go deeper into it. That's what media literacy is. That's the purpose of this channel, right? Is media literacy. So the way that I do this is by reading philosophy, but if philosophy is not your cup of tea, then do it through reading like critique essays. Right? Yeah. Read essays by your favorite authors on why they write certain things. And if you're looking for a place to start and you're a fantasy fan, both C.S. Lewis and Tolkien wrote essays on how to write stories. J.K. Rowling also has some. Stephen King has some. Like, that's a good place to start.
I've got Stephen King.
Yeah, you in the last episode actually came at this theme from a psychology standpoint with personalities, right?
Yes.
That's something.
Well, and finding a place to fit in.
Yeah.
And with this one, I was trying to kind of play on relationships a little bit, and it didn't quite work out outside of Triss and 4, but I had the right idea.
No, I think you could have even juxtaposed the idea of relationships between how Evelyn and 4 or Evelyn and Marcus, like paralleling that Evelyn and Marcus had a tumultuous relationship, or even looking at cycles of violence and abuse, right? How 4 was abused by his father and possibly neglected by his mother, and in this case, if we're going with your version of 4, right, then we could say like how is 4 dealing with that violence and abuse in horror relationships going forward, because breaking cycles of violence is difficult, and if you want to be like work on self-actualization, that could be something to look for in the 3rd book going forward. But all I'm saying is that these kinds of themes are basically how you want to interpret, how you want to read into whatever it is you're watching or reading, and I tend to do that through philosophy. And so when I watched the first movie of this, it struck me immediately that this was about, or I wanted to come at it rather from a Marxist standpoint. And I said that right off the bat. And to me, everything that's going on here is all about control of people so in the first book they use the serum to control people, right? The mind control serum. And I think there's an easier way to do it. Instead of mind control, why wouldn't you just use propaganda? That's the traditional way of controlling people. Control what they think, and that will help that. And so I think I've done a great job. Like, the whole reason
You have.
Janine wanted to actually get rid of abnegation is revealed to us in this pitch that I just did, where it turns out she didn't think they were corrupt either. She was actually after this thing, whatever it was, that turned out to explain that the city was an experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where can people find you?
Cool. You can find me on twitch.tv/AlyssaLou, ALYSSALOOO, or Instagram at Alyssa Rose Handmade.
You can find where you do lots of handmade knitting and stuff like that.
Knitting, crochet, sewing.
It's pretty cool.
Embroidery.
Yeah. You can find our awesome band, Robot Philosopher, wherever you listen to dope music, Spotify and all that stuff. You can also find CineMasters on Facebook and maybe on Instagram. I'll have to talk to our social media manager about that. I don't know if that's a thing yet. You can also watch awesome episodes of this podcast. This is a thing, the long and the short of it. There's so much cool stuff happening right here on this channel. And be sure to stay tuned for the third installment of this Divergent CineMasters series. And until then, peace out.
Bye.